So I'd just like to ask you to tell us the story of how this stone came to be and
Sure.
what it means to you.
Yeah, about 2 years ago, I was doing some just image searches of Vienna and the areas in which my ancestors lived. And I came across an image that was one of the Stones of Remembrance that was in one of the sidewalks. I can't remember which one, but it immediately struck me that that is something that I would want to do because my grandfather, my great grandparents, there was no marker, nothing to reflect upon. There was no graveyard or cemetery or what have you. And it immediately caught my attention. And so I started, it didn't take me long to connect the dots to the Stones of Remembrance project. And I think very soon after I reached out to you and kind enough to respond very quickly, and the rest is history. I was able to, get things moving in relatively quick order, and that's how I found the organization.
And what came up for you in this process of research?
So this investigation of my family has been a very long process. I think I must have been in my early 20s when I started getting really curious about their stories, who they were. My grandfather was very silent about his experiences here, and I was just ever curious about who they were and what life was like for them. And so I want to say over 30 years ago, it was just such a much different experience finding information. My first time in Vienna, I think, was 1993 or 94. I went to the place where the stone was placed, and remember trying to find information about what the area was like. And I even sat and waited for residents to come out of the building at 143 Gudrunstraße to see if I could engage anybody. And I can only say that it was just very much, I don't know that it was solely a language barrier, but it was very difficult to get any kind of dialogue. The moment I brought up the reason why I was, at that location. And now I think it's so much changed, the availability of information, the archives, where now a lot of information has been scanned and indexed, has surfaced so much more information to kind of start slowly piecing what happened, to them and where they went. And, I feel like today has been a kind of a chapter closed, for me personally, in, I think, probably finding out everything I could possibly find out, about my grandparents and his family.
And so how was the day today for you, the inauguration?
I think there's some sense of resolution to some degree. It was interesting to hear the family at 147 Favoritenstraße that she had a bundle of letters, that helped provide some clarity, in her family's history. And very similar, where my mother had a bundle of letters that, weren't translated. She didn't know what they said. And those letters provided a psychological insight as a parent myself now, which is also obviously 30 years ago, not having a child, a sense of passing a story to my son and enabling him with the information so that he can pass on these stories, hopefully, should he have a family. So I feel some sense of resolution, which I hadn't felt before. And I was writing to my mother yesterday, this sense of, there's a weird sadness, not just beyond the loss, but a sadness of realizing there's probably not anything more I can find out, about Francisca, about Oskar, and my grandfather's experience. So there's a bit of a grieving that I feel like this journey now is coming to its end, at least in terms of investigation, or if that's the right word to use for this. I do want to thank you personally and thank the organization. It's remarkable that you're providing this service, not just to the families, but I think to everyone, not just in Vienna, but as I said earlier today, just that I hope it sparks some sense of curiosity. Somebody, not everybody, obviously. I was looking at many. I've can't tell you how many miles I've walked in the last 4 days here, specifically looking, for Stones of Remembrance, taking photos. And I know there's not a lot of people who are probably going through that, specifically looking, but I hope that the organization does spark, in some people, that there were rich lives and stories and experiences. And I'm very grateful that you provide this, not just to my family, but, hundreds of others. It's been, nothing but a pleasure having this experience and interacting with you guys throughout this to make today possible. I was telling Dolly, Saturday's my son's bar mitzvah, and this is such a fitting, joining of a story to now him, moving into adulthood. And I hope he fully appreciates, all that this organization not just means for me and for him, but for, countless others like him. So I thank you. I really want to thank you.
Thank you so much.
And I think that's what I'd like to say.